Good morning and welcome to Easter Revision for Religion, and what we're going to be looking at in 5 sessions is the following. I'll go through that and then we'll start with a bit of work on the coursework. Okay, so if we look at the session 1, that's the first lesson, coursework section A and section B. That'll be the first part of the first lesson. We'll look at that, how you fill it out, and talk a little bit about the extension and the announcement that the Minister made last week. Then we'll talk about the exam paper, we'll talk about timing in the exam paper, structure of questions, and of course, in religion, the questions can be a little bit ambiguous at times, let's put it that way. So we talk a little bit about technique, or how you get around that ambiguity if you face it in the exam, and planning and timing, structure and content of exam answers, and then we'll have a look at what some of the topics that we think may come up. Now, and that's what we'll be focusing our section 2 on. In our session 2, the search for meaning and values, we'll be looking at that topic there, looking at focusing in on certain questions that we think might come up that haven't come up for a time, and it would be a good idea now to prepare for those particular questions. Plan them, have a bank of plans, if you like, when you go into the exam. So the session 3 then will be Christianity, Origins and Contemporary Expression, a similar approach. We'll be looking at the type of questions that we think may come up in the exam, and have a look at those, how you would structure them, how you go about them, maybe go through some material there as well. And session 4, World Religions, we'll be looking at the World Religions section of the course, how you go about answering those questions, okay, and section 5, the option that I'm going to be covering in this lesson is religion and gender, okay, and again, focusing in on the questions that might come up. Okay, so that's the sort of template for the course during the week, and we might tweak that slightly as we go on. So we'll have a look at the coursework element of the religion, and you'll find this in your pack, in your notes that you've got there, and of course here are the titles, and you would have chosen your title by now, I hope, and you would have done the majority of work in your title by now, and of course you have Religion, the Irish Experience, Irish Myths and Sagas from Ancient Times, Containing Evidence of Religious Belief. That's a nice title. And then we have Paul Cullen and the Belfast Enlightenment, and then of course we have the Science, the indication of 2 different images of God that have a relationship between religion and science, and lastly, analysis of the concerns that are shared by religion and science on the questions to do with the beginnings of human life. Okay, the beginning of human life. So there was a little bit of dispute over that particular question there, whether it was the beginning of human life, the origins of human life, of humanity, or a human life, and I emailed the SEC about that, and they said both are acceptable. So that's the advice I got. But if you're doing that particular question, I would suggest that you contact the SEC yourself through an email and explain that sort of debate so that it can't so you have clarification. That's the best way to put it. So when we're looking at our coursework there, right, we've got our practice booklet. Now your practice booklet is available on SEC website, examinations.ie. You put in your examination number and you put in your year of submission on the cover. That's very, very easy to do. You all have your examination number now. And the coursework, of course, has been extended by the Minister's announcement last week to May 15th. So May 15th is the new deadline for the coursework, because it was April 24th. So that suggests that you may not be back at school before the Easter holidays, and it suggests then that, but it would be a great opportunity to have this booklet filled in and looking very, very nice for the time you do the exam. You come back in, and then of course you have to transcribe the material from this practice booklet into your main booklet, and that has to be done under supervision in school. So when we talk about May 15th, you really need all the work done before that, and you need to leave yourself a week whereby you can transfer it across. It'll only take maybe a few hours or so, but it has to be done under the supervision, or else the teacher isn't supposed to sign it off. In other words, you can't take the real booklet home with you. So that's the first part, and there's the examiner mark, and we'll talk about that shortly, and completing coursework A, Part A. So Part A of the coursework, Identify the title he chose from the prescribed list of coursework, so you write in the title that you chose and where it is in the syllabus, and the sources of information. The sources of information used: web-based materials, literature, other sources. So you went to sources for your information based on your project. So if you did the early Irish myths, you got some books on early Irish myths, you looked those up, you use those as source references, okay? Now, you can do this in a number of ways, the coursework. We're going to go through 2 ways that you can present section A. And the main parts of information and the steps he took and the skills she used in investigation, title chosen from the prescribed coursework. When you're doing this section here, for every step you take in your coursework, for example, interrogating a source, there's a corresponding skill. And you need to link the skills and the steps together in that section of the course. This is sort of a reflective exercise whereby you're examining the learning process, as it's called, and then a summary of the findings from your examination of the title chosen, a summary of your findings, what you found out from your sources regarding the title, and provide supporting evidence for his or her conclusions. For the conclusions, draw supporting evidence means source references. Okay, source references. You can put these in the answer. You can put these in the answer like you would do, for example, in a history essay or something like that, where you refer to a source. You can do this in brackets after you say something, or a quote from a source. You might put it in brackets afterwards, or you can use a footnote. Okay, that's the section A. We're gonna focus on that firstly. Then we come back and look at section B. So in section A, your coursework will look like this. So in goes the title. In goes the syllabus section. It's from the section of the syllabus. Okay, that's all filled out there. And then, of course, we have our sources. Now, presenting your sources is quite important. It's a quite important idea. So if you're using a book, the author, the title, the publisher, the